So what are the best teams to never win the RLCS World Championship? Well, we're going to look at things like longevity. We're going to look at things like greatness of rosters overall. We're going to look at were they ever the best team and then not win the World Championship? Stuff like this. How close were they to winning it, in that event, in that grand final, maybe even more specifically. So yeah, we're going to look at stuff like that. Anyways, let's start with Kuxir, Marky, and Mikerules. This roster, most of their results were pre-RLCS. But in pre-RLCS, they did win one of the two most important events, that being the MLG Pro League, and then got second in the other, that being the RLC Pro League. Outside of that, they were extremely dominant as well in all EU competitions too, and some of the lesser international competitions like the Rocket Royales that I've mentioned in other videos. Then yeah, they got second place in season 1, season 1 World Championship, right? Going into that, they were probably the favorites to win it, I would say, but they were probably the best team to play at the event. They were at the event itself. They didn't play the best, but they did. They were supposed to be the best, if you will. You look at season 2 and beyond, EU were the best, and pre-season 1, EU were the best. In my opinion, everything lines towards, they were supposed to win, which adds to the idea of best team to not win the RLCS World Championship. So, yeah, for me, I'm going to put them in A tier probably here. Their results are mostly non-RLCS, so for that reason, I'm going to put them here. But in a way, they're kind of an honorary world champion because they won the MLG Pro League. But it's not an actual RLCS World Championship, so it doesn't count. And I'm not going to put them S tier because of it's not actual RLCS. So that does take away from it a little bit. Next up, we're going to talk about Miztik, Kaydop, and Ferra. This team, they made the grand final in season 3. They did disband right after, so they were only together for one event, but they did get to game 7 against Northern Gaming in that grand final. So that was really close, coming in as the #1 EU seed as well. Given in league play they weren't that great, it was really in playoffs that they made up for it. But yeah, there was definitely there's an opportunity there to call them the best team in the world going into the event, because, well, they were representing EU as the #1 seed, so they were right up there. If you say Northern Gaming was the best, fair play. I'm not going to argue with you, but it was either them or Northern Gaming, realistically. So extremely close between those two. And because they went to Game 7, automatically I feel like I had to put them on here because they got so close to winning the World Championship. Next up, we've got a lot Mognus and Metsa. This team does have a bit of longevity that the other team that I just put on D tier doesn't have, because they got second in season 4. And they got third in season 5. But in that grand final in season 4, they got annihilated. So that's kind of the problem there. They did go to game 7 in the upper final, but it wasn't the grand final. I would say that game 7 in the grand final is a little bit more relevant. And it was also pretty clear that a lot Mognus and Metsa were never the best team in the world, whereas Miztik, Kaydop, Ferra, they could have been in season 3. So I'll put them just behind, but you can put it the other way around as well. It doesn't really matter too much. Next up, we've got Fireburner, GarrettG, and Jstn. Now, this is the kind of renowned team. This is probably one of the first teams you think about best teams to not win the World Championship, because they got to Game 7 overtime. Plus, and they actually beat Jknaps, in Season 5, this is, in the upper brackets. So, they had gotten a win against this team as well. And then, yeah, they lost in the grand final, Game 7 overtime. Unfortunately for them. Scored in 0 seconds, by the way, to go to overtime. Other than that, they did also make second for noly, WSOE, and DreamHack Valencia. So a bunch of LAN events there where they were really close. They got 2 NA League Play victories, 2 NA Playoff victories. But I would never say that they were ever the best team in the world. They were always really close. A lot of time spent probably as the second best team, dominating America there. They were played 3 seasons, like I said. Twice there that they won the NA playoffs, twice there that they won the NA League Play. I do think that's relevant, by the way. It does show how dominant you were in your region, in my opinion. Although if you want to say the playoffs is worth a bit more, fair play. But yeah, I would put them in A tier probably, to be honest. They did a lot. They stuck around for a long time as well, so that makes them more iconic in that sense. When you think of best teams to never win the World Championship, you don't really think of a team. You don't really think of Miztik, Kaydop, and Ferra, I guess. Though there's definitely an argument there that, you know, season 3 was just not as popular a season as other seasons. You know, the esport wasn't as big back then. So, you know, if that happened today, we'd probably have a bit of a different conversation. But to be fair, they were only around for one season, so they do lack that longevity bit for sure. Other than that, Ferra, Chausette, and Fruity we've got as well. This team you might be surprised to see on the list, but actually, you know, after season 7, there was a little period where they might have actually been the best team in the world, and I'm actually going to say that they were, at least for a little period, maybe not as long as what some other people could say, but there is also something that would support the idea that they were the best team in the world for quite a while. So let's talk about that. So after season 7, they won DreamHack Valencia against Fireburner's NRG. That was his last ever event. So in that period, or well, that event, you would definitely say, you know, they were the best team in the world. That was pretty abundantly clear. And then after that, Summit happens where they get second against NRG. That was a game 7. This time it was Turbo Pulse's NRG. So they're creating a bit of a narrative here, like it's reciprocity. They're PSG. They were PSG before, but then they became reciprocity. But they're kind of setting a rivalry here between the two, because I mean they both got second and then first in, you know, those two events respectively. So, you know, it's very close between them two. Obviously, you had Vitality still around, but then, you know, when League Play and Playoffs comes around, Reciprocity beats Vitality in both League Play and Playoffs. In fact, finishes first in both League Play and Playoffs. So, because EU is seen as the better region, for a lot of people, going into Season 8 Worlds, Reciprocity would have been the best team in the world. For me, I mean, that's a bit presumptuous. You know, for me, I probably wasn't saying that. I think Energy and Vitality were still my number 1 and 2. I mean, I did predict NRG Vitality to play each other in the grand final. It was pretty predictable as well, as you could say. But Reciprocity were at least right up there. And if anyone said, I think this team's going to win it, really, you shouldn't have a strong retort against it. What goes against this team is how they actually ended up doing in that World Championship, which was not very good. They didn't even make top 6. So, yeah, they come in, destroy EU, you know, 4-0 Vitality in EU playoffs, get first in League Play as well, and then, yeah, just shit the bed for the World Championship. I blame Yummy Cheese, man. So, for that reason, they were the best at some points. That's pretty evident, you know, at least for that DreamHack, and slightly after, maybe. So, I'm going to put them in C tier. I feel like they go above D tier, but yeah, I'll put them in C tier. I think that's about right where you could put them. Then Rizzo, Jknaps, and Chicago. For them, they made the RLCS Season 7 final, given that was not a close final, so that should be noted. And they did not come into that as a number 1 seed either. And then they would also go on to win Season 9 North America, which is relevant because the World Championship for that was cancelled. So there's a bit of a what-if story of, you know, whoever you think was the best team in Season 9, whether it be a North American team or a European team, you know, that team to you is going to seem like one of the best teams to never win the World Championship because in your opinion, they would have done it, right? So naturally, that makes them one of the best that haven't won it. And for a lot of people, G2 would have been the favorite. Would they have been the favorite to most people? I don't even know, but in EU, there was a lack of clarity. Are Vitality or Jknaps the best team in Europe? Because Jknaps had won the EU playoffs in RLCS, but then right after in Spring Series, Vitality won that. So it was clear it was one of those two, but which one? They weren't sure. Whereas for NA, After NA playoffs, G2 wins. Maybe it's still close for a lot of people between them and Space Station, although the grand final was pretty dominant. And then Spring Series happens and G2 win again. So it was abundantly clear G2 were the best in North America. And then lack of competition, I guess, for second place, or first and second place, it was clear that G2 were the best in North America. So because they don't have that competition like EU, maybe a lot of people would have said G2 were actually the most common favorite, I guess, at the time. Would they actually have won it? For me, I don't know. For me, them, Jknaps, and Vitality were all pretty equal, in my opinion. So based on that, I think EU had the higher chance because they had 2 top-tier teams where NA would have only had 1. Space Station are really close, but they would have been fourth by a larger distance there, in my opinion. So, that's what I would say. I would say because Ferra, Chausette, and Fruity have been more clearly the best team, whereas Rizzo, Jknaps, Chicago was a bit of a what-if. I'm going to put Ferra, Chausette, and Fruity ahead of them, but you can put it the other way around as well. Again, very, very small difference. So yeah, there we go. Next up, we have a big one, marked by 8, Monkey Moon, and Extra. This one's tough. Obviously, you look at that G2 roster we just talked about, that Season 9 victory there, that was a short period, right? But for marked by 8, Monkey Moon, and Extra, that was a whole year straight where all of the results were online and everything is like a what if, right? And in terms of the dominance that they had regionally during that what if, I guess, this online period, they dominated EU massively. We think NRG nowadays dominate NA, and during a time when NA wasn't the most competitive, NRG came back to win the World Championship. But other than NRG, it's been really no one else competing in North America. A little bit of Gen G that one time with when Appjack was still there with First Killer, and then the Ultimates as well more recently, but it's a bit few and far between, if you will, and there was never more than 2 teams that could really compete at one time in North America. Whereas at this point, maybe not early on because NRG had just won the World Championship, but definitely the latter half of RLCS, in my opinion, EU maybe slightly better back then than NA is now, at least relative to the time. That's definitely arguable though, but for me, it's the sheer domination that sets them ahead. Because I'm comparing them to an NRG roster that isn't particularly dominant internationally. Yes, they are always good, but they aren't dominant internationally, and I feel like because the regions would have been closer at the time, that showing the same level of dominance implies that they would have done better internationally back then than NRG has been doing nowadays. But that's all a bit of a what if. But I will never forget that BDS domination ever. And for me, the what if is that they would have been the best team in the world for about a year straight. Personally, that's my personal opinion. So that's all up to you. If you want to not believe in that what if, then you can put them maybe even as low as B tier. I think it's hard to put them below A tier, but maybe you can do that. For me, yeah, they are. I've kind of spoiled it already, haven't I? For me, I feel like they are S tier. They did win in RLCS 8 regionals out of 12. NRG, the roster that I just mentioned, in the last 2 years have also won 8 regionals out of 12. So that's why I compared the dominance there, because they basically had equal dominance, except back then there were more splits and more regionals, because I'm counting the majors as regionals there. Though I should probably say that those majors are slightly more valuable than the regionals. Not a lot. It's a small difference. And also, the regionals are more valuable because there was no LAN, so every online event becomes more important, or at least comes across as more important. That's why it's more prevalent to me than NRG's dominance in the last 2 years as well, because these online events were the only things we had. So you take away the offline events, so you don't get the credit for that, but you do get slightly more credit for winning those online events, in my opinion. So based on that as well, and the fact the first major that they came in, that they could actually participate in, They actually ended up playing the best team from North America in RLCS X as well. So we kind of had that showdown already where BDS came out on top. So to me as well, that was kind of the proof and evidence that I needed to say BDS have been the best team this whole time until that point. So for me, that's enough, not proof, but you know, things to look at that do point in that direction. So yeah, I personally have them in S tier. Next up, we have Vatira Joyo Rise. I have a bit of a hot take about this one. Oddly enough, I don't think they were the best team when they won the major, but I do think they were the best team when they didn't. That's like in the actual major that they won, they were the best team at the event, as in they were playing the best, but they weren't the actual best team around, if that makes sense. I know I explained that poorly, but I thought the BDS was a better team. They just didn't play like it at that event. You know, you look at regionally, BDS were winning more regionals, and they would win worlds right after as well. But they were the best at the major, you know, considering how everyone played, I mean. But for the actual major, before that, the winter major, I thought they actually played the best in that as well. And I actually thought that they were the best team going into it too. So they looked the best and were the best at that event. The reason I say that is because I think the format kind of worked against them. You know, look at this lower bracket run, right? They first round, they're literally playing against NA Seed 1, NRG at this time, 3-2. They win against Evil Geniuses, win against Furia, win against FaZe Clan, win against Space Station, win against G2, and then lose in the rematch. So they even won against G2 as well. You know, you look at G2, all they did to warrant playing only 2 series until the grand final was win the group stage. So to me, they got overpunished, and they looked like the best team. They were more impressive in the whole event, in my opinion, than them. So I do put them quite highly. I'm going to put them in B tier, given they obviously didn't do that great at Worlds, but there was definitely a period there where they looked like the best team in the world, and then they had also got the major victory as well after that. So quite a bit of value there. Then next we'll talk about the team that actually got the victory in the winter major. So again, I didn't think they looked like the best team in the world at this point, but they do have a major win, so we do have to take that into account. I think they didn't win NA that split. They would win NA in the spring split, although they didn't do well in that spring major, but they would come back and get second at Worlds, where they did get thrashed by BDS. So again, another World Championship where a team gets thrashed. A lot of people, because of the Worlds thing, are going to put them ahead, but for me, Vatira Rise Joyo were better for longer. They were the best team, and then they won the major after that. For Jknaps Chicago Atomic, they won a major without being the best team, and would never look like the best team again. So when we think about the conversation of best teams to never win it, to me, Jknaps Chicago Atomic doesn't come to my mind as early as Vatira Rise Joyo personally. And although when you look at the results, it's hard to argue for that, I think most people will actually be thinking the same thing as me. So yeah, there you go. There you go. Never the best team, Atomic, Jknaps, Chicago. Whereas Vatira Joyo Rise, I would say at some point they were the best team. That's the big difference for me, and I think it's a very notable one. More notable than finishing second at Worlds but getting absolutely annihilated, in my opinion. Next up, we have Apparentlyjack, Noly, and Chronic. This one is interesting. They did come in as the #1 seed in NA and win the fall major. That being said, I do think they were the best team in the world at this point, but it was by a very slim margin. You know, some people will say, what about Karmine Corp? Well, they only won one regional. You know, the other teams being Oxygen and Liquid as well, who also won one regional in Europe. So, and Gen G beat Liquid, and they would go on to beat FaZe in the semi-final. who, you know, would make the grand final of the next major as well. So, you know, they were very competitive as well during that whole split phase in Gen G, and would be in the next split as well. So, you know, they beat some top level teams, and I think they proved to be just narrowly the best team in the world at this point. Not by a giant margin. For me, I can't put them on the same level as Chicago, Jknaps, and Atomic, even though I do think they were the best team, but the margins were so thin, and they don't have the longevity the same way Jknaps, Chicago, Atomic, and Vatira, Rise, and Joyo did. Because like I said, Vatira, Rise, and Joyo, they won the major when I didn't even think they were the best team, and there was a split where I did think they were the best team. So yeah, Apparentlyjack, noly, Chronic, they only really had that one top split. So for that reason, I put them at the top of C tier. Next, we have a bit of a bugged out picture here, but Itachi, Vatira, and Exotiik, they won the Winter Major, being clear favorites and coming in as #1 seed. Got a bit unlucky, to be honest, with the whole Zen stuff. You know, Zen coming in and completely annihilating, you know, Vatira's fun in RLCS, if you will. So, you know, a bit unlucky, I guess. A bit similar to a lot Mognus, Metsa, where, like, okay, they went up against, you know, Gale Force, Dingatos, the greatest team of all time. Well, unlucky, wrong time. You can use a similar excuse, but I'm not going to weigh into that excuse too much here. I'm going to... Do they go? I would say probably B tier. They had more longevity in Apparentlyjack, noly, and Chronic, and were more clearly the best team in the world in winter than Gen G were in fall. So I'll put them at the bottom of B tier here. I think that's fair. Next, we have dralii, Vatira, and atow. I have made a video talking about the greatness of this roster, at least for the first split that they played in 2025, was it? I've already forgotten what year it is. But, so I guess check that out if you want. I'll put it in the description if I remember. But yeah, they were extremely dominant, starting with even Flip and Spin, where, you know, that ultimate roster was created, where we all thought, you know, Monkey Moon, Zen, and Exotiik would be the best team in the world, but turned out that wasn't the case. And then that split one occurred, where, I mean, they won... They didn't win every event. They did lose one regional, but the events that they did win, they won more one-sidedly than I've ever seen a team win regionals before, including the major as well, where what, it was 4-0 in the semi and then 4-0 in the grand final, or maybe 4-1. It was incredibly dominant. So because they were so dominant for that one split, to then not have a world championship under your name is automatically puts you at the top of this list, right? So I'm gonna put them in S tier. I feel like I'm gonna put them behind Marked by 8 Monkey Moon Extra though, just because you know, a little bit of lack of longevity, you could say. Like, they don't have as much dominance because they were regularly losing. They did win 2 out of 4 lands that year, so I would probably say they were the best team 2025. Not the most successful necessarily, because Energy won the World Championship, and that's just value-wise immense. But definitely the best team. They played the best throughout the year. So there's that. I'm trying to think still, like Marked by 8, Monkey Moon Extra. For me, I think it's the major that they won after that that's just about separates them ahead of them. Otherwise, they'd probably be in A tier, to be honest, without the major victory at the end. But they dominated for a whole year straight. Vatira, atow, dralii, their domination was mostly one split. Regionally, they did win a lot, but they were not impressive at the second major. They came back for EWC, only made top 4 at Worlds. For me, that's maybe just short off of that BDS roster for me. But if you have the other way around, then fair enough. And then kiileerrz and kiileerrz. Yeah, same time as the Karmine Corp roster we were just talking about. But they won FIFA E, which isn't actually too helpful because you can't prove you're the best team by winning FIFA E. Raleigh major win, you've got that. But I will say that to me, that major felt like a step down from the first major, from the Birmingham major. Because Karmine Corp were so much ahead of everyone else that the only way Falcons could have won the Rally Major is Karmine Corp stepping down a level. There's no other way. Like, fair play to Falcons, they stepped up a level compared to Major 1, but if Karmine Corp never stepped down, in my opinion, that would have been irrelevant. So, you know, it's like, yeah, they were probably the best team specifically at the Major, but you give Karmine Corp maybe a few weeks to actually play the game or something. I don't know if they were trolling or something, but something led to them stepping down a level. And if they hadn't, then they would have just won again, in my opinion. So yeah, there's that. Then they got, what, second place at Worlds in a final where they probably should have won against NRG, realistically. So that adds to the effect of, like, you know, best teams that haven't won a World Championship. They even had it there. It was right there in the grand final. They probably should have won it, but didn't. So that puts them high on the list. Where exactly? I'm going to put them probably A tier, even though I never really thought that they were the best team in the world, clearly. I guess you have to give them a bit of credit for that rally split. I guess they were the best team in the world at that point. Yeah, I'll put them just about in A tier, but I'm gonna put them behind Fireburner, GarrettG, and Jstn, even though they themselves also weren't really considered ever the best team in the world. But they went to Game 7 overtime, okay? And they came from the upper bracket, beating the team they would eventually lose to. So I feel like there is a different story here. To me, that's different. That's different. So yeah, there you go. I guess that's my list. Let me know if there's any teams that you think I missed out on that I haven't put on the list. Let me know what are your biggest disagreements and stuff like that. Interested to have a discussion about it in the comments. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.